policy framework with Beijing. This is the one about cooperating and disagreeing. Executive Director of the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, Justin Bassey, has been thinking in this area since details emerged at the weekend, and he joined us here a little earlier. Justin Bassey, always good to have you on the program. Now, on the scale of Chinese military provocations against Western ships and aircraft, where does, in your assessment, this sonar attack on HMAS Toowoomba rate?
Thanks, Greg. It is good to be with you. I think context is very important here, and the context is that the Australian ship, the HMAS Toowoomba, was in international waters, in Japan's EEZ, undertaking a UN operation in relation to sanctions enforcement in relation to North Korea. It was the Chinese ship that approached, and not only did the Australian ship communicate with the Chinese ship, but they got an acknowledgement. So there's no doubt that the actions taken, the use of the sonar, was deliberate, it was dangerous and provocative. And the issue around that is the strategic side as well. I think what it shows, Greg, is what China views a stabilised relationship. They view a stabilised relationship as one in which, for a few economic inducements, Australia is silent as China continues to breach one international rule after another. So it's very significant and clearly resulted in injuries to Australian personnel.
Okay, I might come back to the strategic considerations in a moment, but just to test the thinking, is there any possibility that there wasn't a strategy involved in this at all? That is to say, it was an over-exuberant, perhaps ill-trained crew on the Ningbo, that's the name of the Chinese destroyer, rather than some deliberate attempt to harm Australian crew?
Look, mistakes can always happen, of course, and we don't know whether there was an instruction from Beijing or was carried out from the ship itself. However, if this was just a one-off, people would be more tolerant and able to say, well, mistakes happen. But this is a pattern of behaviour, consistent breaches of international rules. Just in the last year, Greg, we've seen Chinese lasing Australian planes. We've seen them release chaff into the engines of an Australian maritime surveillance plane. And it's not just Australia either. And it's not just the first time that they've interrupted a UN operation. We've seen only last month an intercept by a Chinese fighter jet of a Canadian surveillance plane also carrying out a UN operation. So it's that pattern of behaviour, and what it really goes to show is that China will continue pressing and pressing to see exactly how far they can go.
Yeah, so the Global Times is, not necessarily the Chinese government, but it strongly reflects the view of Beijing. It, firstly, on some of the points you've raised, Justin Bassey, disputes the location as Japan's exclusive economic zone. It describes it as self-proclaimed, and it says that the Toowoomba was engaged in, quote, close-in reconnaissance. Is that likely to be the official view of the communist regime in Beijing?
I think we've seen, again, a pattern of behaviour of instead of accepting that something has gone on, that they should simply say, yes, we made a mistake. And they could even say that it was unintended or that we didn't know that there were divers. They just use the old approach of deny, deny, deny. And that's the case in relation to all of China's breaches of international law. Unfortunately, the pattern of behaviour is not just in the South China Sea, Greg. Every international agreement that Beijing signs onto, every bilateral agreement that Beijing signs onto, they breach, whether it be in relation to not using cyberspace to steal intellectual property, whether it be UNCLOS, the international law of the sea, or in relation to its responsibilities in relation to the World Trade Organization and bilateral free trade agreement. So that pattern of behaviour where they breach a rule and they find it very easy to deny that they've done anything wrong continues, and it's exactly why countries like Australia should form collectives with other countries in calling such behaviour out.
All right, so joining the dots or building on the context that you outlined at the beginning of our discussion, Justin, the context being the Prime Minister's recent top-level engagement with President Xi, do you think this naval provocation is a statement by the Chinese leadership that will normalise on trade, but do not expect any changes in our conduct on what we would regard as the high seas?
Well, I don't know whether this specific incident is a statement itself, but what it is what Beijing wants the routine to be, that they're able to do what they like, as they like, when they like. And the problems with it are many. First, it really runs a risk, Greg, that Australia and other countries set a precedent of only calling out Beijing's malicious behaviour when it goes so far as to injuring personnel or potentially injuring personnel. And that's exactly what Beijing wants the routine to be. They want to be able to operate in the grey zone. They want to be able to do whatever they like up to the level of conflict. And they'll continue to test our resolve on that. The second element goes to why the Prime Minister, if it is the case that he didn't raise it with President Xi, why he should have. That we don't want to leave the impression with President Xi and Foreign Minister Wang Yi that Australia will put economic interests above our security interests. That's vitally important.
Okay, because I was going to ask, of course, you've worked at or near the top levels of Australian government. Are there reasons why a Prime Minister might be advised not to raise it with President Xi in the rather informal environment that an APEC summit provides?
Well, I think if that was the advice to him, it was poor advice. I think it's important also to separate, Greg, there's been some criticism of the delay in the public reporting, not reporting it until Saturday. I think, to be fair, such incidents, they do take time to work out the facts, and you don't want a government statement to be rushed with such accusations. So it is fair to expect some time. That's different, however, to using what is a very good opportunity face-to-face in a meeting, in a private meeting, not to slap, not even to say it in a pointed way, but to say to President Xi and to Foreign Minister Wang Yi, I've been advised that a serious incident has happened in which Australian personnel have been injured. This is not supportive or consistent with stabilised relations. It goes exactly against what we've been talking about in recent times. And we need to address it. We will be calling it out. And we need to ensure that you are aware that you need to prevent it from happening again.
Would it be reasonable to presume, looking at the other side of the fence, that the Chinese leadership right there in San Francisco may well have known about it through their own channels?
Sure. We will never know if President Xi or Foreign Minister Wang Yi knew about it, but I think therein lies the problem for us. If it is the case, Greg, that the Prime Minister did not raise the issue with them, they will leave with the view that Australia is putting economic interests above security interests. It also goes to the problem of consistency, that what happens next time if an incident happens and the Prime Minister does raise it with President Xi, they will think that there's an inconsistency. And really important consistency in foreign policy is vital. And if we pick and choose the international law breaches that we comment on and that we raise privately with other countries, then we're the ones who are actually, we're the inconsistent ones.
Sure.
So really the matter should be, regardless of the country involved, the action should be determinant of whether we comment or not.
And just finally, Justin Bassey, is it too late to further escalate this beyond what the Defence Minister, Richard Marles, did late last week? Could Australia, for instance, ask that the Chinese Defence Attaché here in Canberra went home?
I don't think the incident requires that level of diplomatic sanction. And I think the statement released was a good one. It was crystal clear on why the incident was so problematic. I think the issue shows that silence is not the answer here, that we cannot just tolerate what should be intolerable. We need to ensure that if there is international law breach that we engage and that we comment to ensure that other countries know what acceptable behaviour is and what unacceptable behaviour is. And that's not just important for Australia, Greg, but it's important for our region, that our region knows that a country like Australia and others will comment where needed. And it's the same case with China's actions against the Philippines and why it really is incumbent on Australia to join other countries in condemning those actions as well.
Yeah, fascinating episode, both in the communication of it, but also, I suppose, in the margin of error, which is narrowing on all of these encounters. Justin Bassey, really appreciate your analysis as always.
Thanks, Greg.